discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy. No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Not to be a backseat driver, but can you say for sure you got the best monthly payment possible on your auto loan? Could it be that you might have gotten a better deal by shopping the loan at a few places and have a lower car payment? Next time, before you go car shopping, visit Communication Federal Credit Union first. Our auto loan experts will find you a perfect loan and get you the lowest monthly payment we can. Communication Federal, your auto loan experts. Restrictions apply. Federally insured by NCUA.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Green man in the desert night, Bigfoot roaming out of sight. Government shadows, secrets deep, conspiracies unfold while we sleep. Strange encounters unexplained, truth is out that really shame. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling history, stories untold. Area 51, a whispered name. UFO sightings, a haunting flame. Loch Ness monster, a watery myth. Cryptozoology, a curious gift. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely chained. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling mystery, stories untold. Skeptics doubt, believers yearn for answers hidden yet to learn. In the twilight zone where logic ends, the search continues with all ends. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely chained. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling mystery, stories untold. Truth is out there. Truth is out there.
And good Saturday night, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully we're not interrupting anybody's brown chicken, brown cow moments because it is Valentine's night, but we're here anyway. So we're here, we're live. It's Juxtaposition. This is a makeup episode because I was half dead last week. So, but we're back. We're live. I'm Rick. He's Orty, and we're here. How you doing, man? How you doing?
Which half? Because that could be a show in and of itself.
Yeah.
The half dead.
It's a good question. Well, I mean, to be fair, thanks to some nerve damage, I'm already pretty much half dead. So yeah. Anyway, that is a different show, though.
Yes.
So yeah. So
How you doing, man?
how's your day been? Ugh.
How
I
you-
got, dude.
What's
Like
going on
right,
with your
right
show?
after you right after you texted me, I started having gremlin issues again. I was like, damn it, I am gonna figure out how to do this damn show today.
You just
But-
got to find a way to placate the gnomes, my friend. The goblins, they're after you.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I blame you.
It's not my fault.
I blame you.
It's not my fault. All I did was invoke the topic. You're the one who pissed off the goblins. Okay.
I don't even know
what you
how,
did.
though.
Only you know what you did.
I don't even know.
Did you try burning sage?
Anyway, no, there's Vincent was giving me crap about that the last time. I think it was Vincent was giving me crap about that the last time I talked about burning sage. You said no, it's something else
Okay.
something else for that.
Well, you're just gonna have to wait until the next Juxtober where we have the cures for goblins.
Tim, are we both coming through a week, or is it just me? I'm really starting to hate Restream.
Yeah, possibly. So, yeah, is it both of us or is it just Rick? Meanwhile,
Because I had to back mine down a little bit because when I couldn't hear you before, I was getting echo, so I thought I was overamped. So
no, that was just me because I was retarded and forgot to turn off mute. And yeah, so myself, I'm eternally awesome. I made some huge headway on a project that's been vexing me for a couple weeks, and just yeah. So anyway, crossing I's and dotting T's. And it's 50 degrees and windy. Weather and traffic on the threes here at klrnradio.com.
okay, but Al, the specific question I'm trying to figure out: are we both low, or is it just one of us? And if so, which one? So I can figure out if I can dial it in a little better. Because we both sound fine on our end. That's why we're confused.
Yes. I sound fabulous.
So-
You sound
Well, you always sound fabulous.
it's I remember when women used to come into the chat just to swoon over my voice. So,
And then they got used to the sound of it.
and then they got used to the
that's
sound of it,
okay.
and then it became like nails on a chalkboard. So
So
Yep.
yeah. All right. So I did just do some adjustment. Al, did that help or no? Because I guess you are coming through louder, so it looks like it's on my end again. But I have everything set where I've been having it set where nobody was complaining. And now
I
they're
learned it
complaining.
from you. So,
I hate this.
But this topic, I'm actually excited. I was really bummed we didn't get to do it last week. And I am getting a report that you sound great, and that's from your usual critic. So carry on, my
I don't
wayward
know.
son.
I went ahead and bumped everything up another 5. I figured that should level us out pretty close. So, and I'll just dial everything down in my own ears. So.
All right. So, but yeah, this one I was kind of bummed. I mean, I know you were hurting for certain, and that's why we couldn't do it last week. Yeah, this has been a topic that you and I've been kind of dancing around with other shows, and finally I just said, let's do the whole thing. And that is objects that shouldn't exist. We know they exist. They absolutely exist. We just don't understand why they exist.
True enough. Sorry, since I was dialing everything else in, I'm trying to get back to my notes. Hang on just a second.
Yeah. So, and these are objects that we have found through archaeologically through the years, and one of them is actually really recent. But without the context, I mean, they were found in their context, but without the context of why they were created in the first place, they just remain an absolute mystery. And first among these, it's the one everybody knows, and we would be remiss not to talk about it, and that's the Baghdad battery. As this thing entered history quietly, which is often how most of these things do. In 1936, during excavations in Hujat Rabu, a Parthian era site just outside of I butchered that. Just outside modern Baghdad, archaeologists uncovered a small clay vessel among just a bunch of random routine debris. It stood about 5 inches tall. It was sealed with asphalt, generally unremarkable, no markings on it. It's the kind of thing that would have just vanished in a storeroom forever as pottery. And then inside it, they found a rolled copper cylinder, and inside that, an iron rod. And it was suspended so the metals never touched. Like I said, there was no decorations or inscriptions or anything telling anyone why this thing existed.
It's funny that this is one of the first ones that we're talking about tonight, because this was, I think, the second, or I think it might have been like the third show we ever did had this one in here, if I remember right.
Yeah, we haven't touched on this topic in a very long time.
Yeah, it was back when we were doing. It's one of the very first ones we ever did about the pyramid. Somehow this got worked in there too.
Yeah,
if I remember right. But at first glance, nothing about the jar announces any sort of importance. It doesn't resemble ritual art. It's not ornate. It is not symbolic. It looks functional in a way that is almost aggressively plain, as if its maker expected the function to be self-evident to the intended user. That assumption alone creates a problem, because to modern observers, the function is anything but obvious.
When I was putting this together, I was thinking about how many objects do you have around you just sitting on your desk that don't have any descriptor on it whatsoever. And say 1,500 years from now, if someone were to dig it up, would they even have the slightest idea of how it functioned?
So, and for some reason, this has put this in the. So almost every time we touched on any form of archaeology show lately, the thing that keeps running through my head is the episode of Sliders, where they slide into an Earth where they're thousands of years ahead of their own timeline. So that their doubles were there originally, but it's thousands of years later than it should be. And there's an excavation going on, and they find a parking meter, and they have no idea what a parking meter is.
Right.
And the folks that were the folks that knew what it was, because in their time it's still relatively in use, were trying to explain it, and they kept looking at them like they were stupid. So yeah, I can just imagine, the assumption we make. Well, thousands of years, everybody's still going to know what this stuff is. Yeah, no, probably not.
I mean, because I was thinking about it, it's like I was looking at my cordless drill. 1,000 years from now, battery's completely dead, right? But it's still there. The only marking it has on it is DeWalt. It doesn't say hammer drive. It doesn't say, cordless drill. It just says DeWalt on it. So think of looking at that without function, without context, and what did they use this for? Because if you're just trying to use it as a drill without the battery, it's ergonomically insane. So, yeah, but getting back, I mean, the significance of the Baghdad battery only emerged when Wilhelm Koenig, he was the director of the National Museum of Iraq at the time, he examined it, and he noticed that the internal arrangement, copper and iron, isolated but paired with each other, and asphalt acting as an insulator, the space for liquid sealed inside. Anyone familiar with basic electrochemistry, this configuration is instantly recognizable as a galvanic cell. It's not a metaphor, not a resemblance. It's working principle. That's what this object is.
Yeah, so when replicas were constructed decades later using period-appropriate materials, they produced measurable electrical current when filled with acidic liquids, such as vinegar or fermented wine. The voltage was low but real, enough to register, enough to plate metals, enough to cross a conceptual line that many people assume ancient technology never actually approached. That assumption is where the mystery begins, not where it ends.
Yeah, one theory proposes that the device was used for electroplating, as you'd mentioned, depositing thin layers of precious metal onto base objects. And it wasn't a fringe idea. It's the first explanation offered, and it makes the most sense. The argument suggests that ancient craftsmen may have used weak electrical currents to achieve plating effects without understanding the underlying physics behind it. Much as people used fermentation long before microbiology existed.
And supporters of this theory point to Ancient artifacts that appear gilded in ways difficult to replicate using simple heat or mercury methods. They argue that a low voltage battery applied repeatedly could produce surprisingly refined results. In this view, the Baghdad battery represents a trade secret, practical knowledge, guarded by artisans, not recorded by scholars, and eventually lost when the craft tradition itself died.
Yeah, but that raises questions too, because along with the batteries, no wires were found, no clamps, no clear evidence of repeated industrial use. If this were a trade technique, why is there no proliferation of these devices? No workshop remains, no textual references in a civilization that otherwise documented commerce obsessively. The theory works, and it works great, and it makes the most sense, but it works in isolation, which makes it kind of weak.
Other interpretation moves away from the metallurgy aspect and towards medicine. Some researchers have proposed that the electrical sensation produced by the device, mild shocks or tingling, may have been used therapeutically or ritually. Ancient medical systems frequently blurred the line between physical treatment and spiritual practice. Pain, sensation, and healing were often intertwined. Maybe they used it to shock people with septum rings.
Maybe. Well, I mean, to that point, I know I hate bringing it up, but in the acupuncture I've been getting, they've been applying weak electrical charges too, and that has been very therapeutic for me.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's but in this framework, the battery becomes a controlled source of bodily sensation used to awake nerves, stimulate muscles, and enact a symbolic purification. Low voltage, like I was just saying, fits this idea well. Not enough to injure, but enough to be felt. Again, the absence of wires becomes less problematic, but since direct contact could be achieved simply by touching electrodes.
So
Like
this
your
theory
tongue
doesn't
to a
require
9-volt battery.
Yeah. Dude, don't remind me. I remember the first time I told my dad, I was like, I'm not sure this battery's any good. Put it on your tongue. Yeah, that's how much my dad loved me.
I used to do that to wake up for school in the morning.
Yeah, well, you also used to do other things.
Yeah,
to
well,
wake
yeah,
up later in
exactly.
life.
I used to do a lot of other things to wake up to.
So this theory itself doesn't require an industrial context. It requires belief that sensation equals effect, that pain or tingling has meaning. Such beliefs were common, durable, and rarely written down in technical manuals. If true, the device may have functioned as a ritual medical hybrid operating comfortably outside the categories modern scholars prefer. I'm gonna lay odds right now. I think this was an ancient tens unit.
Yeah, and well, I mean, again, no electrodes or anything, but like I said, just it's like the head-on commercials, apply it directly to the forehead. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, the third theory on this, it pushes it further into the symbolic, and some have argued that the Baghdad battery was not meant to power anything. But did you lose me? What's up?
You're back now. I lost you right after the third theory, though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, some have argued that the battery was not meant to power anything, but to demonstrate a phenomenon, to create a visible or tactile effect interpreted as divine or magical. Electricity to the untrained observer behaves like a supernatural force. It's invisible, it's responsive, and it's capable of causing sensation without contact.
So, in a simple context, such an effect could reinforce priestly authority, a statue that tingles when touched, a ritual object that shocks the uninitiated, a controlled miracle requiring no incantation, only knowledge. This theory treats the device not as technology in our sense, but as stagecraft, an engineered mystery embedded inside religious experience. So does this mean that maybe the Ferengi were in ancient Egypt at some point?
Could be. Put them toss them into the Hoagland. Get on that. What's funny about the the mystical aspect of it is that's the one that critics recoil from the most. But it aligns with what we know most about ancient ritual systems. Mystery was not a bug, it was the product. Effects mattered more than explanations. And if electricity could produce awe, then you wouldn't need to you don't need a theory to justify its use.
Another line of thought rejects all electrical interpretations entirely. Some scholars argue that the resemblance to a battery is completely coincidental, that the jar was a storage vessel for scrolls, sacred oils, or talismans. In this view, modern observers are guilty of projection, imposing contemporary frameworks onto ancient objects. Kind of like all the people that like to read the Constitution and put modern spin on the language used.
Yeah. Yeah, and the one thing, I mean, that interpretation carries institutional weight because it preserves historical continuity. It keeps electricity where we expect it, safely late in the timeline, but it struggles to explain the specific pairing of materials and installation strategy. Coincidence is doing the heavy lifting on that one, and coincidence is not a satisfying explanation when there are multiple design elements aligned functionally with this thing.
Yeah, and everybody knows how I feel about coincidences anyway.
I feel about coincidence.
There is also the possibility that the object served multiple purposes over time, and item initially created for one use may have been repurposed as tradition shifted. The battery may not have been invented as a battery at all, but became one through adaptation. Ancient objects often lived long lives accumulating functions rather than being replaced. That's because, back then they made things to last, unlike today. So,
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
anyway.
Well, and that part, it raises a broader possibility that ancient societies occasionally stumbled into effects they didn't fully understand, used them pragmatically, and then lost the knowledge when the context supporting it collapsed. It wasn't suppressed, forbidden. It was just forgotten.
Or, could have been that, whole lost time thing that led to another dark ages that we don't know anything about, but who knows?
Yeah, the
So-
missing. Yeah.
Yeah. So what makes the Baghdad battery so difficult to dismiss is that it does not demand any sort of grand conclusion. It does not prove any type of ancient power grids or lost high-tech civilizations. Its output is small, its ambition is limited. The challenge it presents is subtler and therefore more corrosive. But I do want to point out that if this thing was able to create any form of electricity, as far as I can tell, this would have been thousands of years before anything like that should have existed. So that's
Yeah,
still-
I mean, we're talking a dozen centuries before Volta. What this suggests is that technological insight, it doesn't require theories, institutions, or continuity. It suggests useful discoveries can emerge locally, serve a very narrow purpose, and then vanish without descendants. That knowledge does not always accumulate. Sometimes it just pops in and pops out.
it flickers, if you will.
It-
So this directly contradicts the comforting narrative of progress as a steady climb. Instead, it hints at a landscape littered with dead ends, local maxima, and forgotten experiments. The Baghdad battery becomes a survivor from one such branch, a fragment of a thought that never generalized. And the reason that thought right there, that train of thought becomes so important is because that's actually how invention works. I mean, the little blue pills that we used to run commercials about all the time that everybody used to laugh at us for, that is not what their original use was. So it isn't like invention of some sort hasn't, we can use it for this instead. Cool, let's do that. So yeah, progress is almost never in a straight line. And nobody really thinks about that because, especially with where we are now, because we have all of the progress pretty well nailed down, and to the point where, for us, it honestly kind of seems like technology has stalled until you go back and watch a TV show from the 90s. And you're like, oh, maybe things have advanced more than we realize. Because, I've been doing a lot of 90s TV watching lately, and things look a lot different now than they did then. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. But, I had that conversation with GPT the other night, but that's a different show. The one thing was with this, okay, so there are reports that, and they're often downplayed, that similar vessels were found elsewhere in the region. And we've talked about something similar being found in the pyramid, I believe. And these accounts are all poorly documented, which itself becomes suspicious. The objects don't fit prevailing narratives, often receive less rigorous treatment, no more. and they become footnotes and a set of case studies. And like I mentioned before, the plainness of this, how many of these are just sitting in warehouses of a museum that are just random pottery circa 1500 BC, you know?
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you see Artie from Warehouse 13 skulking around the corner, and you're like, oh,
Right, yeah.
what's happening here? But and this is where academic consensus quietly exerts pressure, not by declaring the object impossible, but by treating it as trivial, an oddity, a curiosity, something that doesn't require sustained attention. It's not a dismissal, but it is a minimization, and it is often a lot more effective because they're not arguing its existence. They're not telling you that it isn't real. They're just saying, hey, this isn't as big of a deal as you think it is. Seems that a lot of those same tricks are still being used today.
Yeah, and the one thing is, belief doesn't respond to minimalization. For those who see the Baghdad battery as evidence of lost or suppressed knowledge, the lack of engagement reinforces suspicion rather than resolving it. Silence becomes the signal and absence becomes the data.
So what all of these theories share, whether practical, medical, ritualistic, or even the dismissive ones, is an inability to fully contextualize the object. Each explanation works only by isolating it from a broader ecosystem that should exist, but apparently does not. No matter which lens you adopt, something essential is missing.
Yeah, and the missing element may not be a lost manual or forgotten text, but just a way of thinking that no longer survives. A cultural comfort where experimentation unburdened by explanation, a willingness to use effects without a theory, and in a world, and I still do this with a lot of stuff, is that it works, and that's good enough for me. I don't need to know how it works. I don't need to know why.
I'm sorry, did somebody mention a missing manual? Believe it or not. Oh, sorry. If that world existed, even briefly, the Baghdad battery makes sense, not as a revolution, but as a tool shaped by curiosity, belief, and a dash of possibly pragmatism. Its survival becomes an accident of preservation, not a marker of importance. And that is the most unsettling possibility of all.
I mean, if this object survived just by chance, how many others didn't? How many functional ideas were erased not because they failed, not because no one thought to write them down, but just, a way that history would not recognize legitimate knowledge?
So, and the Baghdad battery does not force a conclusion. It opens a door. It tells us that the past may have been more experimentally diverse than the record suggests, and that our picture of ancient capability may be shaped less by what existed than by what survived. And the interesting point about this, we see modern parallels of this too, because in America, we think Edison did all these amazing things and Ben Franklin did all these amazing things. But it turns out they were just continuing work that was done by others that you don't usually find out about until you get much older. And then you start finding out that, Tesla did a lot of things that Edison got credit for. And so the whole, parallel developments and, things being shaped all over the place and parallel thought processes and a complete diverse ecosystem of where things were actually created. And basically, just like the rest of history, whoever got their name out first and did it the quickest is the one that got all the credit.
Yeah, because you think of it, the things that we use most in everyday life that, we think of the great inventors, unless you know the names of Tesla or Farnsworth, you just think RCA suddenly came up with the phonograph, or, Westinghouse came up with the television, that there was no false starts and abandoned projects that actually ended up with it. And all that, it invites belief without demanding it. It resists the closure without demanding mystery. It sits uncomfortably in that middle space where mystery thrives, not because the answers are impossible, but because so many answers coexist. And once you allow that space to exist, the rest of it all just becomes inevitable. Because the Baghdad battery isn't alone in all this.
Oh no, there's plenty more that we're going to be getting to tonight. But I do want to point out that I, for one, really didn't know that much about Farnsworth until I watched Warehouse 13. Just to put that out there. So, yeah.
If you don't know who Philip J. Farnsworth is, no, that's Philip J. Fry. Philo Farnsworth. Man, I crossed metaphors there. If you don't know who Philo Farnsworth was, yeah, look it up. It's actually quite fascinating what he developed and how much of that is still present in our daily lives. And I would say 1 person in 50 knows his name, and that's being generous.
MD getting an early jab in for tomorrow. I have an object that shouldn't exist. Every copy of Tiptoes.
Yes, I have to watch that tonight and tomorrow.
Wait, you still haven't watched it yet? Slacker.
I know I watch it so it's fresh. I'll either watch it like the last few shows I've watched before Juxtaposition, or I'll watch it the morning before the show, just so that way the pain is fresh, the scars haven't healed.
Yeah. See, I used to be sad that I didn't do that show that often, and then you guys started torturing each other with movies. I'm like, I'm kind of glad I don't get invited onto that show anymore. So.
What I've put on the list for next month, because for those of you who don't pay attention to such things, the days of February coincide with the days of March. So next month we have a Saturday the 14th, and I have thrown the movie Saturday the 14th into the bucket.
Yeah, well, he'll just split up the poll again, and you'll get stuck with something else instead.
That rat bastard.
You should all run. You should all run competing polls, and then just combine your numbers and be like, "See, now we win."
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, we've hit the point of a break, and as become the norm lately, we do have apparently 2 break songs. So this is the first of 2, and Jeff, as usual, has outdone himself. I'm still working on getting things set up so we can actually start marketing these, because I was just going to put them out on our store, but our store is being cranky with payouts, and they're still not really telling me why. So I'm not giving them much more business right now till I figure something else out. But on that note, we will be right back. Enjoy this first tune of 2. So you do have about 4 minutes to get up and grab a drink if you need to, but hurry back, because we'll miss you if you don't.
Buried under carbon dates, hands of stone, a ticking fate. I was catalogued and shelved, far between the now and else. Maps don't mark the ground I'm on, footprints fade, but I go on. Every layer says I'm wrong, still I sing the ancient song. Upon mystery, just a question left to spark out of place, but in the
And welcome back into the program. Sorry for that delayed return. I was trying not to cough in everybody's ear. But we're back. We're live. Hope everybody's enjoying the show so far. And sorry, I'm still, for some reason, the Restream has made a bunch of changes to how the chat can work, and everything's all weird now until I get each individual pane set up. So anyway, I think I have most of it sorted out now. So we're back. We're live, and we're into segment 2 of hour 1. Don't forget, we do 2 hours now, so we're just barely a quarter of the way through. So
Yeah, we're just getting started.
Just getting started. Anyway.
So if the Baghdad battery suggests that functional knowledge can exist without an explanation, our next object, the Piri-Reis map, suggests something that's even more destabilizing. That knowledge can survive the destruction of the world that produced it, stripped of the context of it, but still be operational.
So for those of you who don't know what we're discussing, you're about to get a miniature history lesson. So in 1513, Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri-Reis compiled a world map on gazelle skin while stationed in Gallipoli. The map itself is not revolutionary by early modern standards. Navigational charts were common, and Ottoman sailors were deeply enmeshed in Mediterranean and Atlantic trade networks. What makes this map extraordinary is not its existence, but its sources. Sources Piri-Reis insists were already old when he used them.
Yeah, only a fragment of the map survives today. It was discovered in 1929 during reservations of the Topkapi Palace in Constantinople. Folded away among other imperial documents, the missing portions are gone, lost, or destroyed, or even repurposed, leaving us with a partial artifact that's already incomplete before the mystery of the analysis even begins.
That fragment depicts the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and a southern landmass that immediately ignited controversy. The coastlines are not drawn in the loose mythical style common to speculative maps. They show restrained proportion, correction. They look like coastlines that have been visited, not just imagined.
Yeah, and it's that southern landmass where this argument detonates. Many observers claim it resembles Antarctica, specifically the Antarctic coastline beneath the ice cap. If that interpretation holds, it implies geographic knowledge that should not exist for another 3 centuries. But even if it does not depict Antarctica, the problem does not go away because wherever it is being mapped with confidence rather than guesswork.
So this is where Piri-Reis' own marginal notes become critical. He explicitly states that he compiled his map from approximately 20 source charts. Some were Portuguese, some were Arabic. Others, he claims, were extremely ancient charts drawn in the time of Alexander. Whether this refers to literal Hellenistic maps or to a symbolic age of antiquity, the implication is the same. He did not believe he was inventing anything. And that matters. Piri-Reis was not speculating. He was curating.
Yeah, one theory holds that the map is lost Portuguese reconnaissance. The Portuguese were aggressively exploring the Atlantic in the late 15th and early 16th centuries. Much of their cartographic knowledge was treated as state secrets. It's entirely plausible that the Ottoman intelligence networks acquired copies or fragments of these charts.
But this theory merely relocates the mystery. If the Portuguese possessed this knowledge, where did they get it? And why does the map include features that exceed even documented Portuguese exploration timelines? Time travelers.
Yeah, another was that
Time travelers. I'm calling it
time
now.
travelers. Yeah. Another interpretation suggests that the map preserves fragments of much older geographic knowledge inherited, recopied, and degraded across centuries. In this view, the map is not evidence of a single advanced civilization, but long-term data survivorship. Accurate coastlines could survive even after the techniques used to generate them were forgotten.
Well, let's also not forget everything that we may have forgotten is still probably stored in the Akashic field. So
Also, yes.
somebody might have tapped into that giant thing. So this idea is uncomfortable for a lot of folks because it challenges a foundational assumption that accurate mapping requires modern instruments. What if some mapping techniques were once known, lost, and never rediscovered? What if precision does not always move forward? Because what if it, like invention, is not always in a straight line?
Yeah, and supporters of this point of view point to the uneven accuracy of the map itself. Some coastlines align astonishingly well with modern data. Others distort and drift and just kind of like secondhand knowledge. But this pattern is exactly what you would expect from from composite sources. High quality data stitched together with degraded copies and misunderstood projections.
Let's not forget that in our own modern timelines, we currently have an argument about whether the globe looks right. So,
Right.
so anyway,
Yes.
so the map's treatment of longitude deepens the mystery. Latitude was relatively easy to calculate using stars. Longitude itself was not. Reliable longitude measurement is usually tied to precision chronometers developed in the 18th century. Yet parts of the Puri-Reis map appear longitudinally coherent in ways that suggest correction well beyond anything that was known at the time, because back then they basically used dead reckoning for that.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, it doesn't mean that the map is perfect, but imperfection is not a weakness here. It's evidence of selective accuracy, which is far harder to explain than uniform error.
another theory proposes that the southern landmass is not Antarctica at all, but a misrepresented extension of South America, or a now submerged landmass, Atlantis. Sorry. This interpretation preserves historical timelines while still acknowledging that something unusual is being represented. It does not eliminate the mystery. It reframes it as one of interpretation rather than impossibility.
There's also a school of thought that treats the map as a navigational artifact rather than a geographic one. In this view, the map prioritizes sailing routes, prevailing winds, coast hugging travel, rather than abstract continental truth. Accuracy would then be functional rather than cartographic, preserving shapes that mattered to sailors regardless of theoretical understanding.
And that actually would make sense. And what makes this interpretation compelling is that it aligns with how sailors actually used maps. Charts were tools, not declarations of cosmology. If a coastline worked, it was kept, even if no one understood why it was shaped that way. Yet this approach cannot explain the map's apparent depiction of ice-free southern coast. It explains why something might be preserved, but not where it comes from. And again, because of that ice-free remark, I'm going to say it again: Atlantis. This map had Atlantis.
Possibly. Yeah. One of the academic consensus often attempts to diffuse the controversy by emphasizing projection errors, calling it coincidence or modern overinterpretation. But these explanations tend to minimize rather than engage. They assume that because the claim is disruptive, it must be softened. And that assumption is not evidence, it's preference.
More importantly, consensus explanations rarely account for why the map's own creator believed his sources were ancient. Puri-Reis had no incentive to fabricate antiquity. Claiming ancient sources does not enhance navigational ability. In fact, it actually complicates it. It would have made more sense if he was trying to build up his prestige to be like, oh no, this was all me. I did this.
Yeah. we're saying, this is compiled, more recently, because when you're talking about ancient, I mean, okay, say we're talking navigation charts rather than cartography. Saying that it came from ancient sources is not the flex people would think it is. I mean, that's, it's, it kind of hurts your claim rather than bolsters it. So, and this is where belief enters the picture. For those who see the map as evidence of lost civilizations or forgotten epochs of exploration, the Piri Reis map is not proof, but confirmation that something does not fit. It validates a sense of history that may be layered rather than linear.
And for skeptics, the map represents an extraordinary but explainable artifact, an example of how knowledge can appear advanced when stripped of its context. These positions are not enemies, they are parallel attempts to make sense of the same wound.
The one thing that everybody agrees on, whether they realize it or not, is that the map outlived its world. The institutions that produced the sources vanished. The sailors who relied on those charts are gone. The languages that explained them dissolved, and what remains is a functional ghost.
And that ghost is dangerous because it undermines the idea that progress is cumulative. It suggests instead that knowledge can peak, fragment, and scatter, leaving behind artifacts that appear prophetic only because we no longer understand the conditions that made them normal. Another thing, while we're on the subject of maps that has always completely intrigued me is the name of the Arctic and the Antarctic, because that's, again, a rather common ancient sort of language. And it basically means bears and no bears. And somehow, even though they had never been there, the people that named it Antarctica were spot on that there were no bears. Explain that one. Explain that one.
You know what? That's one of those things that I knew and forgot, and now that you've put it back into my head, I'm going to work that into a show. But the Piri Reis map, it doesn't demand belief in Atlantis, but it's Atlantis. Global ancient empires or suppressed history. It demands something subtler and kind of more unsettling, in that accurate information can survive without explanation, and that it's actually the explanation is the first thing to collapse.
Like the Baghdad battery, the map does not shout. It does not announce a lost golden age. It whispers that history may be missing chapters, not because they were false, but because they were fragile. And once you accept that, the trajectory of the trajectory of everything that we're going to be discussing tonight and have already discussed changes significantly. Because if tools can survive without manuals and maps can survive without civilizations, then the next question that is raised is inevitable. And that is
what happens when an object survives in perfect condition, but no one remembers why it was made at all? And that question doesn't belong to geography. It belongs to something literally and figuratively much heavier.
It's just the more we dig into these topics, the more weirded out I am, because it's just like that's what put the whole Arctic and Antarctic thing back in my head, because I'm like, this guy's talking about ancient charts and maps that shouldn't have technically existed in the way that we think. And then you go into the fact that somehow these people that had never visited this place knew that one had bears and the others didn't. And I'm just like, I kind of feel like there's more going on here. There really seems like there's a thread, and that's one of the reasons why I keep coming back to. I really think that landmass is probably Atlantis, because Atlantis is one of the only things, other than a handful of people being able to tap into this thing that we call the Akashic field, that explains so many correlations between things that shouldn't exist. Like, even though they're not exactly the same, there are pyramids all over the planet, and they may not look exactly the same, but the fact that they exist at all, thousands of miles apart and separated, as far as we know, and with people that had never communicated with one another, is just astounding to me. The accuracy with which those pyramids are actually tied to celestial bodies for the time frame that we're discussing is astounding. The fact that we now know that there's batteries, especially the Baghdad battery. I mean, this is, again, thousands of years before, as far as we knew, anybody figured out how to store anything that would have been able to allow a stored electrical charge. So these are all things that again, with this map that we're talking about, it isn't just because Atlantis is an upcoming topic for us either. It's just because I really feel like that's what the map's trying to say. Just
Yeah. Since you brought it up a couple times, have you talked to Nemec?
He is supposed to let me know for sure by Wednesday, but he is really wanting to do it, so I'm hoping we can pull it off.
Okay. Because we can either do Atlantis, then the topic I have in mind, or the topic I have in mind in Atlantis, depending upon his schedule. So anyway,
once I know, I'll circle back with you, and then we'll figure out whether we do the next topic, and then Atlantis, and then the next topic. So
excellent. So sweet, good. Glad to have him back. So, but yeah, I mean, to your point, I just as you mentioned Atlantis, I'm like, I've got to get this question out before I forget it. But I mean, not just the pyramids, but in shows we've done about the mound builders and the absolute accuracy that they used with basically what we would consider Stone Age tools. But I was thinking about that too, and this was a different conversation I had with GPT. And that, at what point would, and I know that there's, that miniseries, The Earth Without Man or whatever, where how long everything degrades after mankind ceases to exist. And thinking about it, most of what we have would be dust generally within 1,000 years, unless it was stone. And then you throw the Ice Age on top of that. The last glacial period we had grinding. But I mean, even then, everybody thinks, oh, it was snowball Earth. No, I mean, it was just down to basically, just above the tropics. But there was still a temporal band, around the Earth that everybody was kind of chilling in. But at some point, everybody just started moving on and forgot everything too. So hey, we can go back north. There's bees up there. There's bears up there. That kind of thing.
There be bears here.
There be bears there, or not bears, depending upon what direction you're going.
Nice. Oh. And yes, I know there is an explanation because MD is making it in the chat, but the actual literal translation is bears and not bears. So just saying.
Yeah.
If you go back to the original root language, it literally means bears and not bears. So, because I know the modern translation is just the opposite of the Arctic, but that's actually not what the literal translation is. I know because I just double checked it the other day when it came back up on my timeline again. I was like, is that true? And yeah. So anyway.
Man, those Greeks had a word for everything.
Well, they do. I mean, they're Greeks.
Yeah. But, so break.
Yeah, we have pretty much hit that point, I guess. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with hour 2 in just a minute. Anyway. Sorry. I got distracted for a second. We're going to come back in just a minute as we continue.
Squirrel!
Yeah, well, it happens. It does happen. But anyway. And we'll be right back. So hang out, and we're going to take the top of the hour break, and we'll be back for hour 2 in just a minute. So stay tuned.
Green man in the desert night, Bigfoot roaming out of sight. Government shadows, secrets deep, conspiracies unfold while we sleep. Strange encounters unexplained, truth is out that really chain. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling history, stories untold. Area 51, a whispered name. UFO sightings, a haunting flame. Loch Ness monster, a watery myth. Cryptozoology, a curious gift. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely changed. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling mystery, stories untold. Skeptics doubt, believers yearn for answers hidden yet to logic ends. The search continues with our ends. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely chained. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling mystery, stories untold. Truth is out there. Truth is out there.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Not to be a backseat driver, but can you say for sure you got the best monthly payment possible on your auto loan? Could it be that you might have gotten a better deal by shopping the loan at a few places and have a lower car payment? Next time, before you go car shopping, visit Communication Federal Credit Union first. Our auto loan experts will find you a perfect loan and get you the lowest monthly payment we can. Communication Federal, your auto loan experts. Restrictions apply. Federally insured by NCUA.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
Thanks, JJ.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Green man in the desert night, Bigfoot roaming out of sight. Government shadows, secrets deep, conspiracies unfold while we sleep. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely chained. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling history, stories untold. Area 51, a whispered name. UFO sightings, a haunting flame. Loch Ness monster, a watery myth. Cryptozoology, a curious gift. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely chained. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling mystery, stories untold. Skeptics doubt, believers yearn for answers hidden yet to learn. In the twilight zone where logic ends, the search continues with our hands. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely chained.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Hour 1 is in the books. Hour 2 is now officially underway. Want to thank everybody for taking the time to share out the feeds and the streams and wherever you're finding us, because X is being super glitchy. As a matter of fact, I didn't even get the renewal notice on our premium last night and had to go manually use the card that had the money on it because it never rang. It was weird, but
That's
yeah. Normally it'll say, "Hey,
Yeah,
you didn't have
it's weird.
enough money when I moved something," and it didn't even do that. It just said nope. And then I
No,
went and looked at the
X
end
is
of the day.
glitchy. X is glitchy everywhere because it's like, I mean, when I got my payout, for the last 2 weeks, it was in my bank for a couple days before I got my notification from X.
Yeah, I still think Iran and China are doing some shenanigans.
Could be.
It's not-
I mean,
it's
that's what
not-
they do.
It's not just X, because GPT was being super cranky yesterday too, like over like stupid
yeah.
shit.
Oh yeah. Well, when I was putting this together, when I was putting this show together, I had a lot of fights. So, but yeah, objects that shouldn't exist. In the first hour, we talked on the Piri Reis map and the Baghdad battery. This one still boggles my mind that it exists, and that's the Codex Gigas. And it's like if the first two objects suggest that knowledge can survive without explanation, the Codex Gigas confronts something even more destabilizing: labor and intent surviving without memory. It's not that it's not an object that merely works. And not one that merely remembers. The object whose existence itself demands an explanation that never arrives.
And the Codex Gigas, created in the early 13th century in what is now the Czech Republic, is the largest medieval manuscript known to survive. When opened, it stands nearly 3 feet tall. So nearly as tall as a certain Zelda that we know. Oh, wait, sorry. Anyway,
yeah.
It weighs over 160 pounds. Its pages are made from the skins of approximately 160 animals, prepared, scraped, stretched, and cured by hand. The sheer physicality of the book resists abstraction. This is not symbolic largeness. It is mass. Are we sure this isn't the book that's in The Evil Dead?
The Necronomicon Ex Mortis.
Yeah.
Now that one was easy to carry around. This is just vast. And inside the manuscript is the entire Latin Bible, copied carefully and without abbreviation. Alongside it are historical texts by Josephus, medical treatises, calendars, necromantic instructions, and administrative records. It's not a focused work. It's encyclopedic, but oddly selective. It feels less like a library and more like a collapsed library, compressed into a single impossible volume.
Yeah, I just want to point out it actually has necromantic instructions, so I stand by my previous statement.
Okay.
The first and most famous mystery attached to the Codex Gigas is authorship. Paleographic analysis indicates that the entire manuscript was written by a single hand, not one style, one hand, across hundreds of pages. The handwriting remains astonishingly consistent. Stroke, pressure, spacing, letter forms. There is no visible evolution, no aging, no fatigue, no decline. That alone, to me, creates large problems, because I don't know about you, but back when I used to have to write things by hand, things by even like just a couple pages, normally by the end of the second page, it looked a hell of a lot worse than the first page. So to me, that
I do that within the span of 3 words.
True. It's worse now. I type everything. So yeah, now when I try to write out by hand, I'm like, I can't do this anymore because I type everything. But anyway.
See, and the thing with this is that producing parchment on this scale would have taken years. Writing the text, even at a relentless pace, would likely require decades. That's not conjecture. That's based on known rates of medieval manuscript production. And yet the Codex Gigas shows no sign of being the work of a person over time. It looks as if it emerged fully formed.
One explanation suggests that the work was produced by a monk who devoted his entire life to the project. This is often framed as an act of penance or devotion. The theory is plausible on its surface, but it immediately collides with the institutional reality. Medieval monasteries were not indulgent environments. Resources were communal, time was regulated, labor was assigned. A single individual monopolizing material, space, and decades of effort would require extraordinary justification. And if there is any type of justification in this case, it was never recorded.
And another theory proposes that multiple scribes collaborated to imitate a single hand. This would require not just skill, but coordination at a level rarely achieved even by modern forgers. Sustaining such uniformity across hundreds of pages without detectable variation would itself be an achievement rivaling the legend it's meant to replace.
So the legend itself, of course, is unavoidable. According to medieval accounts, a monk condemned for breaking his vows promised to produce a great book in a single night to save his life. See, I'm telling you, Necronomicon. When the task proved impossible, he made a pact with the devil, see, Necronomicon, who completed the manuscript in exchange for his soul. As proof, the monk included a full-page illustration of the devil inside the book. That illustration actually exists, by the way.
Yeah, it actually occupies an entire page in the book. The devil is depicted symmetrically and unnervingly and with deliberate care. Opposite that is an image depiction of the heavenly city. The pairing, it's not decorative, it's confrontational. It stops the reader and forces an interpretation.
Modern audiences tend to treat this legend as a superstition layered onto an otherwise mundane artifact, but legends do not form randomly. They form where explanation fails. The story of the pact does not solve the mystery, but it does acknowledge it. It is a medieval attempt to articulate something that already felt impossible.
Another theory about it reframes the Codex Gigas as an intentional act of containment rather than creation. In this view, the book is not meant to be read regularly, but to hold knowledge, canonical, historical, forbidden inside a single object. A vault disguised as a book, its size becomes a feature, not a flaw.
This interpretation, believe it or not, actually gains traction when you consider the incursion of the necromantic text. See, I keep telling you. And this one, we haven't even talked about this yet. And the exorcism instructions alongside scripture. The codex does not separate sacred form from dangerous knowledge. It binds them together literally. That choice suggests intentionality rather than some form of accident. So who then was the audience for said book?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Codex Gigas is not practical for individual reading. It's just too large to move easily. It's too heavy to consult casually. It's not annotated for teaching. It suggests that its primary function may not have been use, but presence, a physical manifestation of authority, fear, or totality.
Yet another theory suggests that the codex was a political object, a display of institutional power. By assembling scripture, history, medicine, and magic into one impossible artifact, a monastery could signal dominance over both divine and earthly domains. Knowledge controlled is also knowledge bound.
Yeah, this one falters when we look at replication, though. Powerful institutions replicate symbols. They don't produce one-off monuments with no descendants. The Codex Gigas didn't start a tradition. It didn't spawn copies. It remained singular in and of itself.
There's also the possibility that the book represents a personal cosmology rather than an institutional one. A single mind attempting to reconcile scripture, history, medicine, and the occult into a unified worldview. In this reading, the codex becomes an interior map, a private ordering of reality, rendered in material form. This interpretation makes the consistency of the handwriting more unsettling, not less. It suggests obsession rather than devotion, compulsion rather than commission.
Yeah, and this is where academia retreats to pragmatism. They emphasize time, discipline, and skill. They insist the book is extraordinary but not impossible. This framing preserves the medieval world as legible and bounded. It reassures us that nothing truly anomalous occurred.
But that reassurance does not explain why the Codex feels anomalous, even by medieval standards. Hell, by today's standards, medieval
Yeah,
scribes
sure.
themselves told stories about it. They did not treat it as normal output. The legend is evidence of contemporary unease, not modern projection. What all theories struggle with is intent, not how the book was made, but why it was made, and especially in this form. Why this scale? Why with this context? Why with the silence and stigma attached to it at the same time? The Codex Gigas preserves everything except its own purpose.
Yeah, it's unlike the Baghdad Battery, whose function is debated, and unlike the Piri Reis map, whose sources are missing, the Codex gives us too much. It gives us text, craft, labor, care, and what it withholds is the one thing that would make it all intelligible: motive.
Yeah. That absence itself creates space for belief. For some, the Codex is evidence of supernatural intervention. For others, it is proof of human obsession pushed beyond healthy bounds. For still others, it represents a forgotten mode of thinking, one that sought to totalize knowledge rather than distribute it. None of these interpretations cancel the others. They coexist uneasily, circling the same object without touching the center. So you remember Kamala Harris's Venn diagrams? Yeah, this would be a really
Yeah.
weird Venn diagram. Just saying. Because the coexistence is the actual point.
Yeah, the Codex Gigas doesn't demand that we accept the literal devil. It demands that we confront the possibility that human effort, when detached from institutional logic, can produce artifacts that defy categorization. That not all creations are meant to be used, understood, or even replicated. It stands as a reminder that some objects survive not because they fit into history, but because history does not know what to do with them. And when that object survives intact, and when all intent for it evaporates, it becomes something else entirely. It's just a giant question mark bound in skin. And this thing, if you've seen pictures of it, is absolutely enormous. It's just, and even when you look at it, you're like, why would anybody make this thing? Even now, I ain't fucking reading all that.
Yeah. Right below the title, it should just say TL semicolon DR.
Yeah, TLDR. Because you think of it, not only the extraordinary effort that it would take to create it, the extraordinary effort it would take to fucking read it. And especially since it doesn't have an index,
See, that's the weirdest part for me. Think about just that alone. And granted, we're talking, that this is a very old book. But when is the last time you saw any form of a Bible without some sort of an index, at least for that part of it?
Yeah, some sort of, idea. So that way you at least know where to page turn. But it's just, and the fact that, yes, it's all in there and it's all like in blocks, but still, like, we had talked about where, exorcism rituals written in the margins of, scripture. It's just kind of like, and all in the same, the thing that absolutely boggles me about it is that it's all in the same hand and not degrading. I think that's the biggest mystery of it. Even if it was taking all the mystery out of it, and it would one person, whether through obsession or, consignment, whatever, were to craft this thing, the care it would take to make every pressure the same, every letter the same, to write in the same hand. And like we had talked about, I can't do that across 5 words before I just start to nope out. I mean, granted,
That's
I get distracted by modern mundanity, but still.
But I mean, still, they're just. I mean, look. Even if you think about it, because there's no real. Oh, look, he's not scrolling his phone. He's sitting in a room with a desk and a candle. What the hell else is he gonna do? So I get that part. But even after say, let's say that his arm, because that's all he was doing. Let's say his arms were fairly strong. But you would figure that after an hour, maybe 2 hours of transcribing, because that's what a lot of this was. It wasn't just him writing from memory, he was transcribing other works into a single place. So you're telling me that after an hour, there wasn't even just a hint of, hey, this L looks a little different, or where's the dot on this I? No, there was none of that. These people are looking at this and think about this from another perspective. If it was, in fact, something that would have taken years to create, and if it was made naturally, it would take years to create it because of the curing of the skins and everything else. Not to mention the transcriptions. But the fact that across years worth of work, there was no deviation in style, none,
Right.
that's impossible.
Well, and then you got to factor in too. It's like, oh yeah, if somebody works so many hours a day, blah 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 blah. Okay, look, you got to stop to eat. You got to stop to have basic bodily functions. You've got to sleep. You've got to you get sick. You're having a day. None of that is reflected in it. It is just one steady hand. Not even like some spilled stew on it or anything. Just one end to the other. Like it was all, like the legend says, it was all written in one night, or it was created in one night.
I mean, unfortunately, that's really the only theory that makes sense, which is actually the most terrifying.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there would have to be some kind of a drift. I mean, the rest of these things that we've talked about are things that are naturally explainable. This one is not. Not when you look at its size, the complexity, the fact that apparently from the very first page to the very last page, everything looks exactly the same. That, I mean, unless it was beamed down by one of Jeff's people already made, that's impossible. Other than the other explanation that is legend, and that one scares me. That one honestly really scares me.
Yeah, it's like Steven said in the chat, OCD is a powerful drug. And yes, obsession is powerful, and it just, goddamn. Again, if you're not familiar with it, go look at this thing online. It is absolutely huge. And then it's like, I mean, again, who is it for? Like we talked about, monasteries were communal. They're not just going to say, hey, you know what? You can take the next couple decades off to write a book. I mean, that's a dispensation, the level of which would just be unheard of at the time. And it's okay. So it's consignment. You got some, petty king who's setting somebody up. At some point, they're going to come in and go, hey, where are we at on that thing? You've been working at it for 15 years. I'm about to die. My kid's about to take, it's just, I'm just completely stunned at the level of which this thing should not exist.
So yeah, I have been trying to actually get some images to pull up since we had some time anyway, just to kind of give folks an idea, but they're taking a minute, so I think I finally got it to behave though. Hang on. I mean, it's not really going to reflect the scale because it's a flat image, but there's one of them.
There's the devil. I don't think that next picture is it.
Not sure. Hang on. I mean, we can see what it says. It says it is.
Okay, maybe. It looks smaller on the.
But
anyway.
But yeah, apparently
what's that they have on it for scale? On the next picture over.
This one?
Yeah, it looks like they have something on it for scale.
Hang on, I might be able to zoom in.
Is that another book?
Yes. That is another book.
Let's see if
I can't.
let's see if I can
I
find
can't
that
tell.
picture for reference.
Can't tell what kind of book it is, but yes, that is another book on top of it to give it scale.
Here.
And
I
it
gotta,
doesn't look like a very.
I gotta give one. This
Doesn't
actually
look-
gives you the an idea of scale. Let me drop it in the chat real quick. Oh, screenshot isn't going to help. I'll send it over Discord. Maybe.
So you could have just shared the link. You can do it too.
Okay. Yeah, here. I'll drop this in the here. Okay, links in the chat. Not in the main chat, in the show chat.
All right, and that should no, it's not. Why is it not on the screen though? Because it should be. Where did it put it? Is it down here maybe? Nope. Hang on. Things are being cranky. Did I mention
Live
restreaming
radio,
is
everyone?
retarded?
You did mention.
Where did that even go? Oh, there it is. Hang on. All right, so now that I know what I'm looking for, let's get back over here again. And all right, so that should hopefully be on the screen now. Why is it? Oh, there it goes. So
That's how big it
that is a person standing with book.
Yeah.
And that's not a hobbit, by the way. That's an actual human. So
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, that's a dude.
I mean, but even if it were a hobbit, that would be scary enough.
Right. I mean, just look at the size of that thing. And that kind of explains you when you think about it, it's like, wow, 160 different animals were used to make that. And you're like, that's yeah.
Well, so and one of the reasons I was trying so hard to get a picture pulled up when I started realizing the dimensions we were talking about, this makes it that much harder for the penmanship to be perfect for the entire book. Look at how
that's crawling around. That's like
was
doing a supersized puzzle, you know, the kind that takes up your whole floor.
I mean, because we're talking about dude sitting at a desk with a kid. No, he couldn't have been doing this from a desk. He had to have been sprawled on the floor to even make it work. So you're talking about hours laying in awkward positions to be able to write across pages that are as big as you are, and you're telling me there were no grammatical, not a single grammatical error, not one.
Or think of it. So it's standing up like that in that picture, right? That's an odd angle to write at.
Yeah.
If you see, rather than on the ground, if you're doing it at that, like say it's just propped up against the wall and you're doing it like it, that's an odd angle. I mean, that's a painting, but even then, text and painting isn't very great. But anyway, it's just absolutely dumbfounding. The size of the mass of that thing.
Yeah. Can we say gobsmackery?
Yes.
I think we can.
Yeah. Just so. Anyway, that's the Codex Gigas, and that's the one of, well, aside from the next object, but the next object is just because it's local to me. Just completely bogs. The other things I can understand. That one I just can't wrap my brain around.
Yeah, I mean the rest of them are at least explainable. This one honestly seems impossible, but it can't be impossible because it actually exists.
I mean, it's a thing you can
So
go
the
see.
the question becomes, how does it exist? I mean, how does it exist? How could it just because again, I'm sorry, OCD doesn't explain it well enough. Even people with OCD get hand cramps.
Right. Yeah. They need to take a nap. And I mean, it's like I joke about it when I was, yeah, we're having our 5th wedding anniversary. I said, I was even married 5 years in a row. I can't imagine doing anything I like for 5 years.
Oh, well, that's the other thing. I mean, if there's not some sort of a legendary explanation on this thing being created, it would have, I mean, just the skins alone. Think about that. How long would it actually take to cure 160 skins?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean,
Because
even then, it's like, okay, so we've got some vellum in stock. Okay, cool. How much? Because I'm going big. Well, we got to start working on that.
right,
I mean, it is, it's like Steven said in the chat. It is an excellent medium. It really is. And if you've ever actually touched Valium, it's really, you wonder why more of it doesn't remain. But it's just a lot, dude. Everything about that is just a lot. I mean, you may think supersizing a meal is a lot. That's a lot.
right. So, because I honestly don't have any frame of reference, I'm actually asking my trusty assistant how long it would take, because that's who helped me find the pictures. So, according to this typical timeline based on medieval manuals, washing and initial soaking would take 1 to 2 days. Fresh hides were soaked in water to remove blood and dirt. Then they go into a lime bath to loosen hair. That lasted for about 8 to 16 days. Skin set in lime solution about 8 days, sometimes up to 2 weeks if it was wintertime. Then they went into a second lime soak for yet another 8 days, often repeated to fully dye hair and soften. Rinse water and then rinse and water soak again for 2 days to remove the lime and prep for stretching. Stretching, scraping, drying typically lasted several days. So total typical time per skin, roughly 3 to 6 weeks.
So yeah, you compound that out by 160.
By 160.
So now you're talking, a year and a half of somebody else's labor involved in this, dedicated that. And yeah, you can say, okay, I'm sure they had, not production, but still, you had maybe a couple people working on it. And, it's not like you're just sitting there waiting for one piece to do while you're doing the other set. But still, labor wise, that just making the Valium is a very labor intensive.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they usually process the skins in batches, but assuming this was not the work of the devil, the composition, the skinning, the drying, the writing likely took upwards of 30 years. 30 years.
And then you're talking about the ink production and everything too. It's just baffling. It's just Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about the details of this, the more my head's just like this does not.
Yeah,
this does not.
I'm
compute.
spiraling.
I'm trying to make it compute, but it doesn't.
I'm completely
compute.
spiraling on, because this now goes beyond one person's effort, and it becomes the effort of a lot of people.
I mean, it would have literally taken the entire monastery to make this project make sense. But then the fact that the writing styles were all the same would make that impossible.
So, I mean, just using
Okay,
Occam's
my brain's
razor, the
hurting and we're
simplest
gonna
explanation,
break
devil.
I'm telling you, there's a reason why when we first started reading about this thing, the first thing I thought of was the stupid Necronomicon thing. I'm like, I think there's more to this story. But speaking of more to the story, we are at break number 2, which includes song number 2. So hang out, enjoy the tunes, maybe get up, stretch your legs, grab a drink, maybe even smoke a little bit of what helps you think, unless you're working. But then again, even if you are, I'm likely not your boss and I don't judge. You're listening to Juxtaposition live on KLRN Radio. We'll be right back after this banger from Jeff the Alien.
Ink without a tone, letters long to hide. Every page a going up here on either side, and hands keep turning paper lay down, blinking can speak, but silence isn't empty, you're sharp and cold and see. The crown. One is left unfinished, one is far too fast. One demands a future was been sealed in the past. Knowledge with no context, context kill no say. If it plays a story, then it never serve a lie. We don't solve the problem, we just choose what we ignore. Comfort wears the crown. It wears the crown. Some things I've forgotten, they're just waiting for to crack.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're in the final segment of Juxtaposition. Again, this is a makeup episode, so we'll be back again next Saturday, but we're not quite done yet. Want to thank everybody for taking the time to hang out with us and sharing the feeds. It looks like we are actually number one, I think, on X feeds that I can see on my screen. So I think this is what I saw.
At least with people we follow and, the circle. Yeah. Yeah.
But we're currently kicking G8's news butt, so I always like when that happens on a Saturday night.
That's good.
Anyway.
That's good. And that's what I like whenever we're doing VCP and we're beating out the bold lib.
Right.
Yeah, that's always fun. Hey, some quick news just popped across my feed. If you could send good thoughts, prayers, healing, concern to Right Girl Problems and History by the Half Point. He's in the hospital. He showed some signs of a stroke this morning, and they're just getting to the realities of the situation right now.
Yes, if you
He's
can,
awake,
please.
he's cognizant with no comprehension issues, and his humor is even making an appearance now and then, but he is tired and, you know, anyway.
Well, the no cognitive issues is kind of huge, so that's a good sign. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
yeah.
anyway, send him if you got him.
Prayer, positive thoughts, good mojo, whatever you got.
Yeah. So, I just saw the update in the KLRN green room. So, anyway, we're in the final stretch, my friend.
We are.
And by the way, that
So-
was an absolute banger too. I love what
Dude,
he's
it
doing
was-
with the graphics now too. With the he's throwing in rather than just the static image, he's throwing in some effects in it too. So just again, raising his level up to 11.
Oh yeah.
Team,
So
million.
it's funny because we both started toying with music at kind of the same time, but his was always kind of next level because there were a couple tricks that I couldn't figure out that he did. Well, eventually I figured out what I was wording wrong to do that. So then he started adding images. So then I started adding images, and now he's surpassed me. I don't know how to do some of what he's done, so I'm gonna have to figure that out. It's not because we're competing, but he always pushes me. He always pushes me to do better. So that's the next thing I gotta learn. But
Hey, maybe we should look at StreamYard too. Anyway,
problem is the pricing is outlandish for StreamYard versus Restream. But
yeah.
with some of what Restream is starting to do, the price is becoming comparable for the plans. So I may actually be looking at changing some. I don't know. Because
one studio to rule them all.
See, I've liked Restream so far because StreamYard kind of gut punched everybody with like a price jump not too long ago. And everybody was like, "You didn't even tell us you were doing this." And Restream's typically trying to keep theirs kind of low because I can do a lot for what I pay for what I have, but to do all the cool stuff, like now, Restream's going to have the option to do the dual feeds, but you got to be on the next plan up from the one that I have, which is like $50 a month instead of the 20 that I pay now. So I'm like, I might be looking to see what StreamYard charging for that one now. Soon. But anyway, that's enough of the behind baseball stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely inside baseball. So the final object is near and dear to me, and it's actually something surprising that I kind of live in the area. Has completely flown under my radar. I didn't even know this thing existed. And that is the Koso artifact. See, and unlike the other objects that we have just discussed tonight, the Koso artifact doesn't come from antiquity, monasteries, or palace archives. It comes from a place that should have made it impossible to misunderstand. It came from the Mojave Desert. In 1961, 3 men on a routine prospecting trip looking for geodes, nothing mystical, nothing symbolic, and nothing ancient by design. They were just out rock hounding.
And what they found should have been inert. A lump. Are they describing my ex-wife right now? So a concentration, something to crack open, catalog and forget. Instead, when the casing was split, it revealed a structure that was instantly recognizable and immediately destabilizing. A ceramic cylinder, a copper ring, and a corroded metal shaft with threads. Not abstract, not symbolic, mechanical. It looked modern because it was modern in form. This is where the problem begins.
The object became known as the Koso artifact because of where it was found, not because of what it was. The casing around it appeared mineralized, hard, stone-like, and irregular, consistent with long-term geologic processes rather than recent debris. Those who handled it at the time described it as not dried mud, but something closer to fossilized material.
The men who discovered it did not initially claim anything extraordinary at all. They did not declare any form of ancient technology. They did not go public with any wild theories. They did what people often do when something feels off. They said, "Hey, check this shit out." And the rest is history. Photographs were taken, measurements were noted, and then, very quickly, the narrative accelerated past the evidence.
Yeah, within a remarkably short window, the object was identified resembling a 1920s era champion spark plug. The conclusion followed immediately. The object was just modern debris encased in a natural process over a much shorter time span than initially assumed. Mystery resolved, case closed. Except that resolution arrived faster than any scrutiny on the object.
So, no formal geological analysis of the casing was published. No peer reviewed paper examined the mineralization rate. No chain of custody documentation was established. The object itself disappeared from public access, surviving only in photographs and secondhand descriptions. The evidence collapsed into assertion. This is not how careful investigation usually behaves. This is how discomfort, or dare I say, potentially a cover up, behaves.
Yeah, the standard explanation rests on the idea that the casing was not ancient rock, but hardened clay, industrial residue, or concretion formed around a discarded spark plug over decades rather than millennia. Yeah, and this is plausible, but it's also incomplete because plausibility is not proof.
The Mojave is not known for rapid mineral encasement of small objects in a way that mimics deep time process. Concretions do form, but their timelines vary widely depending on chemistry, pressure, and environment. The claim that this could happen in mere decades is asserted far more often than it is demonstrated. More troubling is how little interest there was in demonstrating it.
Yeah, if the coastal artifact were merely a curiosity, one would expect slow, boring clarification. Instead, it was rapidly categorized, named, and dismissed, then just allowed to evaporate. And this is why, living somewhat near this area, I never heard of the damn thing. The speed of normalization itself in this is anomalous. And then this leads to the first major interpretive divide of what it is.
And this is when things, as you just pointed out, get interesting, because one camp views the Koso artifact as a textbook case of overinterpretation, a modern object misidentified due to enthusiasm, poor initial assessment, and media amplification. In this view, the mystery is not the object, but the human tendency to mythologize objects such as this. Another camp sees something else entirely, an anomaly that was resolved too quickly to be resolved honestly.
Yeah, the question is not whether or not the object was a spark plug. The question is why that identification was treated as sufficient without closing the remaining gaps. Why was this casing not rigorously analyzed? Why was the object not preserved? Why does the story survive without the artifact? And belief enters precisely where this process fails.
Some researchers have argued that the object represents a modern intrusion into older material, an accident of erosion, collapse, or sediment movement. This would explain the juxtaposition without requiring impossible timelines. But again, this is a story told after the fact, without direct examination.
Yeah, others suggest that the casing may have been misidentified entirely, that it was not a geologic formation at all, but something synthetic that merely appeared stone-like. This explanation undercuts the ancient claim while still preserving the anomaly of misclassification.
So then there are those who refuse to let go of the deeper implication that the object may not have been modern at all, that it may represent a technological artifact out of place in time, either through unknown historical processes, lost industrial activity, or mechanisms we no longer recognize. Which is kind of creepy when you think about it, especially if it resembles a spark plug. So this is where institutional patience kind of runs out.
Yeah, unlike the Baghdad battery or the Piri map, the Kosa artifact it's just too close. it doesn't live safely in the medieval or the ancient past. It intrudes into a period we believe we understand, and it threatens linear progress, not metaphysically, but mechanically. That and that proximity kind of changes the rules.
Hang on. There we go. Nope, that's not the one I'm looking for. What happened to my notes? What just happened?
See,
Okay, hang on.
ancient anomalies, they're allowed mystery because they're already distant. Modern anomalies demand explanation because they destabilize confidence. The Koso artifact is dangerous not because of what it proves, but because of what it suggests. That even in recent history, our confidence in context may be overstated. The disappearance of the object becomes part of the mystery. Without physical access, the debate can never advance. It can only circle. And that's not an accident of time, that's an outcome of neglect.
So some folks that are hearing this maybe for the first time, or other folks that have seen the images, will likely believe that the Carso artifact was nothing more than a spark plug caught in a natural casing. Others will believe it was something genuinely out of place. Juxtaposition does not need to decide between them. What matters is that, in this case, the process itself has completely failed.
In a world that prides itself on forensic rigor, an anomalous object was identified, normalized, and forgotten without satisfying the very standards used to dismiss it. The failure, it's not ancient, it's modern, and it's repeatable.
Sorry, I'm trying to do something real quick. Give me just a sec.
So this makes the Koso artifact different from every other object that came before it in this show. The others challenged our understanding of the past. Okay, there we go. There's the Koso artifact. They challenge our understanding of the past. This one challenges our understanding of how we handle challenges in general,
And it raises an uncomfortable possibility that some mysteries are not unresolved because they are unresolvable, but because resolving them would require admitting uncertainty, where we as human beings often prefer closure.
And this is I had intended to put the Voynich manuscript in with this too, but I decided to punt that for a later topic, because it actually, I believe it ties in more with that than with this topic. But here's because if a mystery appears today, mechanical, material, and inconvenient, how confident should we be that it was preserved long enough to be understood?
The Koso artifact does not ask us to believe in ancient machines. It asks us to notice how quickly belief is managed when it threatens narrative stability. Once you notice that pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Objects don't just disappear because to our senses they are false. Sometimes they disappear because they ask the wrong question at the wrong time. And I was fighting with the system to pull these up because I wanted the folks that are watching this to be able to see this thing. So this is what they found, so that you can see the what it was found in, which actually does look remarkably like a fossil. And then there's this image
of it,
of what it looked like before they split it open. Then there's kind of what it looked. And so there's all these different images of this, and different, radiological images, all kinds of different things. And it's kind of astounding to think about, because to me, that you remember the episode of Next Generation where they found Data's head?
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of what this looks like to me. This looks like an object out of time.
No, it really does. And knowing that area, I'm a desert rat. I trounce around all around that area. Could something get encased with mud like that? Yeah, absolutely. And the problem is that the soil content out there, where in the area this was found, is very fragile. You don't get concretation the way that you do, further down the valley around the LA area or over on the other side of the mountains. In this area, the dirt, the best way I can describe it is when it gets wet, it takes on the consistency of a fresh bag of brown sugar. And yeah, when you leave it out and it dries, it can become hard as a rock, but that rockiness it flakes apart really easy. You're not cracking it open like a geode, you know?
Yeah. No, not yeah, definitely not at all. But so as we get ready to close out the show, what all the objects that we've discussed tonight and what all they share is not any form of impossibility, but inconvenience. Well, except for that damn book. I'm just saying there's definitely some
Right.
inconvenience going on with
That
book.
thing is fucking inconvenient in every possible way.
So most of them do not demand. They don't demand that we rewrite physics, history, or human capability outright, except again for that damn book. What they do demand instead is something far more uncomfortable, that we admit our models of progress, preservation, and understanding are brittle. They assume a world that behaves neatly. These objects, especially that damn book, do not. And I'm sorry to keep coming back to that thing, but that's like that I'm gonna have nightmares about that fucker. I'm just telling you right now, it's gonna happen.
See, the Baghdad battery, it doesn't overthrow modern science. It quietly suggests that useful effects can be discovered, employed, and forgotten without ever becoming part of an official lineage. The pre-Reese map doesn't prove lost global civilization.
Yes,
It
it
hints
does.
that well, kind of, but it hints that accurate information can outlive the cultures that produced it, drifting forward without explanation. The Codex Gigas doesn't require a little devil, kind of does. It confronts us with labor and intent so extreme that the motive itself vanishes. And the Koso
then-
artifact brings that problem home uncomfortably close. It
Yeah,
brings it really close to our time frame.
yeah, because unlike ancient jars, medieval books that were likely written by the devil, or early maps that do include Atlantis, the Kosa artifact lives in our era of confidence. It appears in a time when we believe documentation is thorough, process is rigorous, and anomalies are short lived. Its rapid disappearance isn't a failure of ancient record keeping, it's a failure of modern patience.
Taken together, these objects sketch a pattern that history doesn't like to acknowledge. Knowledge does not move cleanly forward. It fractures and it localizes. It dies with its context. Sometimes it survives only as a tool without an explanation, or an artifact without a purpose, or an answer without a question we don't even know how to ask.
So, this is why academic reassurance often feels hollow in cases like these, not because it is always wrong, but because it assumes the world is obligated to be orderly, because we as humans prefer order. That assumption comforts institutions, not mystery. It comforts institutions, not mysteries. When something doesn't fit, the instinct is to smooth it, to minimize it, or resolve it quickly, especially if it threatens confidence in how knowledge is managed. But mystery doesn't require endorsement to deserve respect.
On one level, these objects reinforce belief in lost sciences, forgotten ages, or suppressed understanding. For others, they represent edges of misinterpretation, coincidence, and human pattern seeking. Nobody's asking you to choose between those two positions. It just asks you to notice where certainty fails, because certainty is not the same thing as truth.
What makes these objects powerful isn't that they refuse explanation forever, except for that damn book. It's that they reveal how quickly explanation becomes a substitute for understanding, how often closure is valued more than curiosity, how easily absence is treated as error instead of signal.
Yeah, if even one of these artifacts represents a genuine gap, one forgotten technique, one lost worldview, one mishandled anomaly, then our picture of history is not wrong, but it's incomplete. And incompleteness is not a flaw, it's an invitation. The danger isn't that these objects like this exist. The danger is assuming that they shouldn't.
Because the moment
Because the moment we decide, go ahead.
Yeah, the moment we decide what the past was allowed to know, we stop asking what it actually did. And somewhere out there, buried, boxed, mislabeled, or quietly and quickly discarded, there are almost certainly other objects that don't belong to the stories we tell ourselves about progress. Objects that worked, objects that mattered, objects that no longer have a place in our society. The question isn't whether they exist. The question is whether we're willing to let them stay strange long enough to teach us anything at all. And my bet and my closing thought on that is probably not, because we don't dig the strangeness. I mean, we do. You and I do. That's why
We
we
dig
do
the
this show.
strangeness. Everyone
Right?
listening digs the strangeness, but yeah, no, academia does not like dig strangeness. They don't like these objects, and that's why discussion of them is a topic on shows like this, and not or histories, mysteries, and stuff. It's not discussed in polite academia. They're
I
very
mean,
fond of the tangible. They're very fond of their theories. And as modern archaeology is destroying even those, the word about it is leaking out really slowly.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's always going to come out slowly, though, because anything that ever turns modern science on its head, they're never going to accept. I mean, we never get political on the show, or at least we try not to. But all the stuff during the COVID era that they were screaming, "Believe the science, believe the science, believe the science," and now we're finding out all these different things where they changed the legal definition of a vaccine. Even though they were slapping vaccine companies' names on them, these things were being manufactured by our Defense Department. They're not even vaccines at all because they're using mRNA technology. So, but you start trying to point these things out, and modern academia and modern science is, we have spoken.
Yeah. And at that
That's
point,
not
that's not a science, that's a religion.
that's exactly it, because that's not how science works. The entire idea of science is to continually push the envelope of knowledge. And there are things that we believe now that would have been considered heresy back in the day because they went against church doctrine. So we now have this humanist religion that is basically, it has become a faith of its own, whether the people that practice it or not want to admit it. But that's another reason why all these strange things that you and I bring up, they try to sweep under the rug as quickly as possible because it doesn't fit their worldview. Because again, you can't really explain a book that is as big as a person, that has hundreds of skins, that apparently was written in the same hand throughout the entirety of the process, that supposedly would have taken at least 30 years to create, and didn't have one variation, not one. That is something that can't be explained even by modern science today. So it's no wonder they're just like, yeah, we're just not going to talk about that. Or even the thing,
Yeah.
the last one we talked about, that legit, you could see the picture if you're watching the streams, it looks like a spark plug, but it does look like a very early era spark plug. But again, how the hell would it have gotten fossilized, even if it was from the 20s?
Yeah, and I gave the description of the dirt in that area. It's just, is it possible? Yeah, obviously. But the one thing I keep coming back to on the Koso artifact is that it was just solved too quickly with no scientific rigor whatsoever. And I'm not saying everything requires a, full academic deep dive into it, but the fact that even by their own statement, their own, debunking theory that, it just fossilized weirdly. Wouldn't that be worthy of investigation to understand the processes of why, it did go all petrified in decades instead of millennia?
Yeah, you'd figure they would want to find that out, because that could indicate some sort of, if it was in fact petrified in such a short amount of time, that could indicate some other flaws and some other things that they've used to date things, where they were like, well, normally it takes this long for things to petrify. So we can reasonably say that it was somewhere around this time frame, and then you have this crop up, and they're like, well, it looks like it was petrified, but we don't really think that's what it was.
And if you could have rapid concretation I mean, I can think of probably if I sat down and gave it 5 minutes, a dozen practical applications of that, where just the research on that alone would be useful. You know,
Yeah.
even it's like, okay, so if this did this in 3.5, 4 decades to have the consistency of a geode, which if you've ever felt a geode is pretty rocky. I mean, in material sciences alone, that would be a huge discovery. It's like, okay, now how do we replicate it and speed it up even more? You're basically
Yeah.
making stone.
I mean, yeah, if you could figure out how to quickly make stone, how much easier would that make construction processes?
Yeah,
But
and
hey,
the
what-
one thing, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Never mind.
It happens.
I said the one thing, then went to grab my cup of tea and forgot what that one thing was.
Yeah, well, that happens. Besides, it's getting late where you are, sir. It's after 9 now. You're about to turn into a pumpkin.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, yeah. Boy, I did. I just hit a wall after we wrapped that up. So, okay, so we're hoping to hear from Nemec this week. And that'll be good. We can get that in.
Once I do hear from him, I will let you know, and then we'll map out the schedule for the next couple of shows. So,
okay, yeah,
but
because I've got 2 on hold. It's just when I want to place them. So
yeah,
I've got ideas. I've got plans within plans. You are transparent to me. Dune posting.
Great movie. Great. Yeah, I was going to say, I think that was a Dune posting, I think.
Dune voicing. Okay. Yeah.
Dune streaming.
Oh. Yeah.
All right. So where can folks find you, my friend? Because we are definitely past the 2-hour mark. And I think I just lost him again. He must be coughing. It shows he's muted. Anyway, so while I figure out what's going on with him.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted. I coughed real quick and then I thought I had unmuted. I must have just clicked right off that little magic circle. So tomorrow you can find me on the Vincent Charles Project, where we will be discussing our watching of the movie Tiptoes.
Thanks to rigged voting.
Thanks to rigged voting. Fuck you, direct democracy. You can find me Tuesday with you and Jeff and Vincent on Mid Explained Poorly. You can find me Wednesday with you on Rick and Orty. And if I didn't say it, you can find me on Twitter as Ordnance Packard. Surprisingly, still next Saturday we will be back with another episode of Juxtaposition. And
you forgot one.
Which one did I forget? Oh, and the Culture Shift this week with Brad with the Fantastic Hair, as we take our deep dive into the entertainment business side of things, which is always a laugh a minute.
You got a busy week next week. You're sounding like
I do have a busy week. Yeah. And then I also have to go to Fresno on Friday for stupid reasons. So I got that going for me, which is nice.
Yay for Fresno. Not. All right.
Hooray, Fresno.
So first things first, want to give a hearty welcome return for our very own Al, who is bringing back Sunday Nights with Al and Ray starting tomorrow night. So he will be my opening act, as I do the usual Sunday nights, Kingdom and Country. Then Monday, I'll be back doing the Rick Robinson show. That, again, is noon, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So you can catch me all 3 of those days. Then also Monday night, back with America Off the Rails. Tuesday, again, hanging out with you guys on Men Explained Poorly, running the entirety of the schedule on Wednesday and Wednesday night in one form or the other. So I'll be working until about midnight my time or a little bit later. And then Thursday, hopefully Jen and Rick. Friday, not sure yet, because I don't know if Aggie's going to be back yet. So I may have to pull some sort of an audible for Friday again. But there will be something at 8:30 on Friday. And, of course, back around with you on our regular night on Juxtaposition. When I'm not doing all that, you can find me as a contributor at twitchy.com. I have started writing there again. I apologize. I'd planned on writing a couple today, but the pollen has been killing me, and I wanted to make sure I didn't overwork it and wind up being too exhausted to do the show. And then Amish is giving me side eye again. So I'm planning on hopefully doing some writing tomorrow. I also do contribute to Misfits Politics, the loftusparty.com, and I also produce the Loftus Party podcast, which drops on Tuesday. You can follow along with KLRN Radio at KLRN Radio on X, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. And you can find me at RowdyRick73, and you can stop being a douche now.
I got one more thing to add because I legitimately thought it was next week. This Friday, session 0 of the D&D session with myself, Vincent Charles, Janie Mack, Delaney, and Jeff, of course, and the EP will be dropping. This is when all the characters meet, and that'll be the first episode drop of that.
Oh, so what time are you guys dropping that on Fridays?
Probably after whatever you do with
Okay. No, well, I was just curious because last I heard, I thought you guys were doing it, dropping it sometime on Saturday, so I was confused. But it's all right.
No, we record on Saturdays on the off Jux weeks. That's when we do our table. And then, yeah. So, yeah, it'll be after He Said, She Said.
Oh, all right. That works. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday night. Thank you to everybody who hung out with us. You have us sitting at over 600 right now. And with X being super glitchy and cranky, that's a pretty damn good number. So thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. You were great. Hail Hydra.
No hailing of the Hydra. We've had this discussion.
Hail it.
Government shall